So there is a thing that Gen Xers do in order to try and diffuse the tension of having made a mistake, and that is parody themselves. Take their own position and kind of debase it in order to get ahead of the other people who are trying to do it for them, and show them that that's actually not something that bothers them. But that's obviously not true. This is something of a coping mechanism. And I think this is why Elon Musk has changed his Twitter profile to Kekius Maximus. Because, of course, recently he had a lot of blowback from his own base over his stance on the H-1B visas. Now, I think actually, if he had communicated himself more clearly, then he wouldn't have inflamed these tensions. And maybe it's not a bad thing that tensions were inflamed. Whenever a great victory is won by a coalition, well, the coalition then looks inward and decides what is the predominant principle that organised it in the first place. And any people who had glommed onto it with secondary and tertiary principles essentially have to learn what their place in this hierarchy is. And I think that Elon, who was trying to do that, had actually suffered something of a reverse here, because actually the nativist sentiment within the MAGA base was stronger than the sort of Republican free marketeer 90s liberal sentiment, actually. And Musk, I think, stepped on this bear trap, and I think this is a way of essentially deflecting from it without having to properly address the issue. Now, there are a couple of issues with this that I have, and the first is, of course, Musk is going to be a leading figure in the MAGA coalition that's going to take power in 2025. What actually would be useful at this point is a show of dignity, of gravitas, and of seriousness. Say, look, no, the American people chose Trump and the people Trump associated with. One of those people was Elon Musk. And actually acting like this reflects on Donald Trump. And that's, I suppose you could say, inconsiderate, but also unwise, I think. I'm a big supporter of Elon Musk, as I'm sure many people are aware. I like Elon Musk on a personal level. And honestly, I feel that we're not cut from a terribly different kind of cloth, despite our relative positions in the world. And this would have been funny in 2017. This isn't funny now. Things have changed, and not for the better. In fact, things have changed for the worse. And so now this is looking less cute and more unserious. And honestly, I think is not hitting the right cultural beat. It is not demonstrating a finger on the pulse of the cultural zeitgeist. It is demonstrating a kind of fear of stepping into a role that Elon himself campaigned for. He did join the MAGA coalition to be the representatives of what the authentic and good and true version of the United States would look like. And so being self-deprecating and demeaning to oneself, actually, I don't think is the right way to go about this. Elon is a king-like figure in his own kingdom, and he pledged his loyalty to the emperor in Donald Trump, the king of kings. And this was a good and noble thing to do. Elon stood for what he thought was right, and he has done it. And now he's found himself in conflict with a bunch of the emperor's most loyal soldiers. And I think that he did come off the worse for it. And I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that it's not really natural for anyone to have 200 million people who can see their every word and follow their every act, right? That's not normal. Elon, I think, is probably the most followed person on Earth. I mean, maybe there's someone in Asia or something who has more, but in the Western world at the very least, I can't think of anyone who has more followers than Elon Musk, especially with the amount of political clout that he has. And I think Elon is used to the veneration that comes with this and his position, because he's accomplished a lot and he deserves to be well thought of for all of his accomplishments. And again, I say this as a well-meaning supporter of Elon. I think he might want to spend less time on Twitter, because I think the backlash towards the H-1B visas and that scandal, or the controversy of it, I think that it looks from the outside like it's been difficult for him to handle, because dealing with hundreds of millions of people following you, and God only knows how many of them were on him about the H-1B visa dispute. That's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I've been on much smaller scale ends of these things, and they're not easy at all. They are tough to deal with. And if you just scale that upwards, I can see why Elon would use this as a kind of defense mechanism of that, and say, well, look, I'm just the jester. I'm just going to play around, have fun, play my video games, and make the media write stupid headlines like Kekius Maximus. It's like, okay, that's great, but actually I don't think that's what the moment calls for. And I think you're actually nervous about stepping into the role that you have, which is a more almost like patrician role when it comes to dealing with the issues that the American people face. And I think the most important one to stress is this is about the American people. MAGA was a nativist movement before it was anything else. That doesn't mean it's a racist movement. That doesn't mean it's an exclusionary movement. That does mean that primarily it is for the American people themselves as a tribe, essentially. And it's in conflict, it's an ideological conflict with the undergirding principles of the tribe that I think Elon's found himself in this position. And I like I said, I'm a big fan of Elon. He brought me back to Twitter. He, at the time of writing, he has monetized me on Twitter, which is incredible, right? I love a lot of the stuff that Elon has done. I like his culture warring up until this point, telling Disney to go F themselves. Superb. Like, I'm totally on board with all of this, because all of these show a kind of nobility, a dignity, and a willingness to stand on point. But this isn't that. And actually, it's, I mean, like I said, it would have been fine in 2017, 2018, but things have changed too much. The world's gotten too much worse in only those 6 years for things to be this frivolous. And at this point, Trump and his close associates have got to show leadership and dignity and gravitas, and why they deserve to have the great victory that they've won, why they deserve to have the respect of the American people and to be looked up to as examples of how things should be done. Weirdly enough, watching this sort of kingly figure turn himself into a jester, and it's one thing to be a kingly figure and have a playful personality, that's fine. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that a lot of people really like Elon Musk, right? So one of the reasons people really like Elon is because of his playful personality. But there's a distinction between being playful and slightly self-deprecating, and then being embarrassing and doing something that people don't want you to do because now they have to feel embarrassed of you. And weirdly, it was Sam Hyde who put out just the single best response summarizing all of this 46-minute long video. And I have to say, I don't know how he's done it, but like the cinematic widescreen and the quality of the cameras and whatnot, man, it looked really good. Like, it's a really good looking video. And that immediately gave it a sense of importance and gravitas. And he just called it Dear Elon. So, okay. And so he goes through, and of course with Sam Hyde, you get, is fairly typical Sam Hyde, but it's completely on point. It is fair to both sides of this argument. And then there's a little bit of sort of off-topic schizoid posting, which is what gives Sam his charm. But in this, Sam has a dignity and gravitas that brings all of the points down to earth and really nails them down in a really fair and really solid way that, frankly, is what Elon possibly should have been doing himself rather than fighting with the MAGA base. Like, Sam isn't being ideological here, right? He's not being racist here. He's not laying out exclusion zones. What he's laying out is the core inclusive nature of what it is to be MAGA, and what is included and why it's about the American people. It's so good. It's such a good video. And like I said, it had, honestly, he begins by saying, look, I'm a comedian. Don't take me seriously. But then he builds this, dare I say, almost statesmanly presence throughout it. And this is what people, I think, really wanted from Elon, not Sam Hyde. Again, Elon, the sort of the good-natured and good-humoured king, has turned himself into the jester. And so in turn, the jester is turning himself into the good-natured king, which is an inversion of how things ought to actually be. It actually ought to be that Elon should have done something like this, rather than this. So Sam Hyde can continue being the jester in the court, and Elon can continue with the moral legitimacy that he had built up throughout the campaign of Donald Trump and throughout his previous career. And I think essentially what this all comes down to, and what underscores all of this, is the nature of what it's going to have to be moving forward. There will have to be a kind of seriousness about the American right in future, because ultimately you are trying to set the order of other people's lives. Right? You're trying to set the rules which will govern an entire nation of people and tell them what right and wrong is. And this is why Sam Hyde is giving a very serious talk in his leather chair, and it shouldn't be needed because Elon Musk shouldn't have absconded the position. Right now, you could say, well, is it Elon Musk's job to be a moral legislator? It's like, well, yeah, kind of, actually. He has been a lot up until this point, and now he's kind of absconding the moral authority he built up there. And should it be Sam Hyde who's doing this? Well, no, it shouldn't be Sam Hyde that's doing this. Why did he feel the need to do this? Well, because he could see a lot of things were out of line and he wanted to put them all back into line and say, look, no, this is what it is. It's not all of this scattered nonsense. And Elon, I think, could have done that and should have done that. And ultimately, I think that what this really is the moment at which the MAGA movement, and I mean everyone in it, from the hard right types to the sort of globalist internationalist types who somehow found themselves in the MAGA coalition, and everyone in between, it's time to understand that this is a movement that's come to maturity now, right? This is a movement that is now given the keys to the kingdom in the United States. It's got the House, it's got the Senate, it's got the presidency, it's got the courts, Supreme Court, it's got the culture, right? It's got everything. MAGA has won everything. And so now is the time to think broadly, deeply, and for the future. Remember, this is no longer about Donald Trump. This is no longer about Elon Musk. This is no longer about any of these. This is about everyone else and what you guys can do for them, because this will define your legacy going forward. People will remember what you did. And just going back to Elon Musk, there's no need to do this, right? Because Elon has a very strong hand. In fact, I've rarely seen a hand this strong anywhere, actually. The Department of Government Efficiency is a sorely needed thing, and something that I'm going to personally, if Elon does what everyone is expecting him to do and follow the sort of Malay principle of approaching the state, I'm going to be deeply envious of, and it should be done with, again, an amount of solemnity and gravitas. It should be, no, we are going to do the right thing for the right reason to get the right result for the American people. That's what this is about. And playing silly buggers like this, I just feel that it's a moment as time has passed. And if someone like Sam Hyde can come out and, as the time of recording, Elon hasn't responded to this, which is a real shame because it's got millions of views, 77,000 likes. It clearly, and it genuinely, it's an amazing piece of media. I'm really envious I didn't make it instead. But Sam did an amazing job on this. And I think that this is something we need to think about. Just I mean, am I a member of the MAGA movement? I don't know. Am I allowed to be? I don't know. I'm a massive supporter of MAGA and Donald Trump, though, as well as Elon Musk. I'm a supporter of all of these things. And I want collective we, if there is one, to win. Right? The patriotic forces of the West, I want us to win. And it just seems to me that we're arriving at an inflection point where the legitimacy of what we stand for is going to be cemented going forward into the future. And if we handle it badly, then it will take generations to fix. But if we handle it well, people will never forget it.